bald hair.
Oh, that's good. That's recorded. It's going to be on record for all history. It's on the internet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari. I'm here with Mr. Michael Jackson. As you can tell, we're rushing. We're not really prepared. How's it going, Michael?
It's going great. You?
I'm surviving. How does freedom taste?
Well, it's a little bit bitter. It tastes good that I'm so thankful to be home, thankful to God that I'm home, but at the same time recognize this is just the start of the battle. You know, the appeal's been filed, and dealing with the sentencing, you know, listening to the judge try and remove the skin off my body while she's listing out her sentencing was quite painful. You know, I wasn't allowed to speak up or anything like that. I always thought, like in the US, you know, you watch court TV, and before these criminals are sentenced, they get to say their piece sort of thing. But not Michael Jackson. So I just had to sit there and listen to it all. It was pretty disturbing.
We got a shout out from Kirk Reese. Good morning, Kirk. How you doing?
Good morning.
Yeah, I always thought that the judges, they were supposed to be dispassionate, you know? Like if I'm a head of HR and two people come in, you know, I have to look at it in an objective manner. I don't turn around to Michael Jackson because if I don't like you and I start, you know, laying into you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been that way the whole game. Like right from day one, she's been Heather McMillan Brown's her name. She's been just terrible at showing you know, unbiased sort of thing, or like what is the word they use for judges that they're supposed to have is it's not unbiased, it's something else. But anyways, she never showed it the whole way through. She was angry all the time. You know, I remember when we had our voir dire hearing to allow Byron Bridle to be an expert witness. So he goes through this hearing where they test his credentials to see if he's an expert witness, which we all know they said he wasn't. But during that hearing, she made me sit in the prisoner's box. Even though I was out on bail, she actually made me go into the prisoner's box for the whole day just so I could feel like I'm still a prisoner, you know? It's crazy. And I'm glad, though, because, you know, all those instances show the real them, you know, it exposes them. They can't hide their lust for power and, you know, drunkenness of power, right? Like during the sentencing hearing, she made it a point more than once to talk about this newly revised law that I've been charged under. Like it's been around a lot of years, but it was revised. So it's much more serious, more criminal now than family-based, and up to 10 years in prison. And she was saying the reason why the government did this was to rid the country of the evil that you represent. That's what she said.
That's totally unbiased. Yeah.
Yeah. But just listening to, you know, remember the old saying, that's the pot calling the kettle black? But just that this evil justice system we have in this country that is so unfair and so unrighteous that they're actually coming after us for standing up and calling us evil. It's laughable, right?
Yeah, it's gone crazy. People ask me why I'm running for office. I'm just going to print out a picture of you and carry it around with me. Like Exhibit A. Yeah.
Well, let me hope my hair is right, and I can maybe do a little spray paint there before you get the picture.
You look great. You look beautiful. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Michael, I'm going to do this periodically throughout this interview. I'm going to put this puppy up. This is your Give, Send, Go donation page. You're trying to raise 200 to 25,000. You've only raised just under 4,000. It's at supportmichaeljacksonslegalbattles.com, or just support Michael Jackson's legal battles. Tell the audience why should they donate to your cause?
Okay, well, after I'm done, I hope you could play that interview, but I'll start off by saying that this battle is not about me, right? This battle is about all of us, and people have to kind of get over that. Like, you can like me, you can hate me, it doesn't really matter. If you're a parent in this country, you got to recognize what the government's trying to do. And you can look back in the last, you know, I guess it did start before COVID, but not much before. Like it started, I think, with the man in British Columbia trying to protect his daughter from transitioning. And he got put in jail for not using the right pronouns of his own child and all those sorts of things. That was when I recognized the battle was really there about our kids, the transgender issue, all these parental rights. And then COVID came, And there was lots of parents around the country, I believe, who were in my situation. None took the steps I took, but there was lots who took it to court and lost. You know, judges unanimously ruled that it was in the child's best interest to have this terrible thing go into their arms. And so I kind of recognized at that time that this was more a war on the parents, not on the children. They want the children, but in order to get to the children, they have to remove the father from the family. So split up that nuclear family or mother, whichever it may be. You know, I believe taking one parent away has a drastic effect on a family, but taking the father away is more kind of important, because a father's the protector. He's the one who watches over and takes care of his family. So in this situation, I've been telling people for a while, just because of the absolutely unfathomable way they've ran this case against me, that there's something more to it, right? That this is about parental rights, about them removing our parental rights in Canada. And people don't really take it seriously, but I've said that the charge that I had was Section 282 of the Criminal Code, abduction and contravention of a parenting order. And it has a written in defense, like most things do. And it says that if a parent believes their child was going to suffer harm, they can't be found guilty of this offense. They don't even have to prove it. They just have to believe it, right? So, you know, I guess it's up to a court then to prove that you believed it or not, which is pretty hard to do. It kind of gives the parents latitude when protecting their children. But since it's been revised, and I think it was 19 or 18, I'm not sure, there's been no precedent set. So I've been telling people that they want to use this as a precedent to come after parents. It's like they have this bloodlust for our rights. You know, we have the right to protect and raise our children any way we see fit, teach them the morals that we have, the views that we have, what's right and wrong, all those things. They want to take that over 100%. And it's so obvious now. So I've been telling this to people, and they're not really getting the grift of it, you know, or the drift of it.
Michael, let me help you get the message out. You go repeat again what the exact law says, or that one section, and then tell the audience what is the precedent that they want to set. Okay.
So the law states that abduction and contravention of parenting order 282, that the defense is that if a parent believes, doesn't have to prove, just believe that their child is going to suffer harm, they cannot be found guilty of this offense. And remember that the judge in my case, when she instructed the jury, told them that doesn't apply to me, that I don't have that defense. So the precedent they want to set is, now that I've been found guilty, they want to set a precedent in that law that says it doesn't matter what a parent believes, that if you break the law, you break the law. And that's it. And you go to jail. You suffer the consequences. And the Crown came out, if you play the interview, the Crown came out and said word for word exactly what I've been telling people.
All right, let me play the interview, and then I'll tell you how I interpret it.
Yep.
I suck at this. Here we go.
200 hours of community service. Prosecutor Zoe Kim Zegler saying this case now sets the precedent for similar cases.
The focus on sentencing in these cases is on denunciation and deterrence. These cases are intended to send that message to say that court orders in family law must be obeyed, and her words were unequivocal to that effect.
Justice Heather McMillan Brown adding, it's clear Mr. Jackson sees himself as a martyr. What he fails to see is the harm he inflicted by tearing his daughter from her mother. Jackson did not comment in court nor to reporters following Friday's decision.
So
there is a later part of it. That's not the right part. There's later in the interview where she actually says about the precedent. She states it clearly that now we have a precedent and that we can, it's later in the interview. They go back to her a second time.
Same video?
Same video, I believe.
All right, let's do it.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
In place as part of Jackson's probation order, including remaining in the province unless being granted permission by the court, and a full non-contact order with his daughter and ex-wife. Donovan Mix, CTV News, Regina.
Oh, wouldn't that be it? I sent the wrong interview to you. Oh, maybe it's
okay.
Maybe it's in the next one. But she does actually. The interview is long with her. That's just a snippet of it. But she thanks the judge for the precedent that wasn't there before. She actually says there's been no precedent and now we have one. So now we have the ability to go after these parents and hold them accountable, sort of thing.
Right. So I'm just trying to understand. So the law says that the parent, like if you don't have custody of your child at that time, you don't have the right to take the child. However, if you think the child is in imminent harm or at risk, you are allowed. That's the exception. You're allowed to take your child, right?
And I had custody, though. I had joint custody, right, at the time.
Oh, okay. So you had joint custody, and the law says you can take your child away, but the judge is just choosing to ignore that part. Basically, the judge is rewriting the law, right?
Yes, yes, so that they can have the precedent that they want.
Right. So precedent, it's basically how a judge rules in one way or another, right? And it's supposed to be a precedent if the law says, like, if Payman Asghari stabs Michael Jackson, Payman Asghari is sentenced to death. And if I stab you with a toothbrush, then they can say, all right, killing somebody with a toothbrush is also considered stabbing. It doesn't have to be a knife. That's what precedent's supposed to be. But in this case, they're just misinterpreting the law. They're changing the law. They're acting as a legislator.
Yes. And that's the way the whole trial has been. Like, there's been many incidents through, actual trial process, all the pretrial things. They've constantly ignored the law and just done whatever they want. And that's the same thing, I think, across the country, that judges are using their own personal views, not the way the law's written, to delineate or to use the law to their advantage, right? They're kind of like, it's like, you're right, it's up to the legislator to write the law and the intent, but the judges are kind of bypassing that and kind of doing whatever they want. And it's obvious to me.
Well, like, this is judicial activism. This is what they're talking about. You got these appointed judges that are hijacking our system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of them, the ones that I've all dealt with, are all appointed by Trudeau in the last 3 or 4 years in the Saskatchewan courts. In fact, I think I've mentioned before that the judge who took away my custody when I was on the run and the lawyer both were appointed to the Appeal Court of Saskatchewan. And my trial judge and that same judge that oversaw the removing of my custody were both appointed together in 2019 by Trudeau. So it's like he's kind of got all these judges that'll kind of fall in line with his wishes, right?
Birds of a feather.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So, Michael, I'm going to bring this up again. So now tell the audience, if you're a parent, what is it in for them if they donate money to you? Why should they? What are they preserving? Okay.
So on Friday after my sentencing, we instantly filed an appeal. I have gotten a lawyer on hand now, or on record sort of thing, for my case. So she's now studying the case and going to be filing the document sort of thing. But the reason is that we have a chance as parents in this country to actually set our own precedent. So because the precedent isn't there in that case, we can set our own. So we as Canadians, as parents who care about our children, we can actually set a precedent in Canadian law that says we have the right to step in under any circumstance and protect our children if we think they're going to suffer harm. So that's the way to go. It's not to let the government set their precedent. Let's us set the precedent as parents, right? Going forward, you can see everything that's happening in society, whether it be what's taught in schools, whether it be the transgender issue, whether it be medical issues, spiritual issues that you may have in your family where you believe in one thing and not the other, maybe all different things that are out there, right? We can set a precedent now that if the government or, if parents, even if parents don't agree on something, that they can't just whitewash it and give it to one parent that fits the government's agenda. They have to listen to the parents. It's our rights, right? It's our rights that are being eroded. It's our rights that they want so that they can have control over our children's future. So if you donate to this and support the cause, it'll help with these legal fees and it will hopefully turn things around. I believe this won't get settled in the Appeal Court of Saskatchewan. I believe that the judges in the Appeal Court of Saskatchewan, 6 of them out of the 7, have all been involved in this. Some of them have done some pretty dirty things in this case, where they've gone against the law as well, just like you were talking about other judges. And I believe this will go to the Supreme Court. I think it has to. Another reason is that we're not basing the appeal on technicalities. Like I was double jeopardized in this situation where I was charged both in family court and in criminal court with the same charge, exact same circumstances, all these things. That's called autrefois convie. That's an issue that I could get off on in appeal court. Another one is the 11H charter application, which again deals with charging a Canadian citizen twice for the same crime. There's the, not allowing expert witnesses. There's, changing my judicial location from Estevan, where I live, which is a rural community and oil, up to the city of Regina, where they picked my jury from the city of Regina. And that's just, even my lawyer said, that is strange. How did they get away with that? And I remember during the hearing, the judge asked when I brought it up on it. Well, it wasn't a hearing, it was a telephone conference. Well, how did that happen? And the Crown said, I don't know. Just all these things that, maybe would be enough to get a new trial or everything else. But I'm really not interested in that. I'm really interested on one prime focus, and that's going forward, that we set a precedent for parental rights. That the reason this gets acquitted or turned back to a new trial is because a parent has the right to protect their children against harm. That's the only thing I'm interested in.
So, Michael, I want to get there. First of all, Prairie, regular viewer, welcome back. What happened is technically you lost your case, right? They just said time served, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the audience to be clear, when I say, Michael Jackson's free, I don't mean he won. I mean, at least the judge didn't throw him back in jail. You served 18 months of a 12-month sentence. Is that correct?
I served 1 year in total time, but because it's on remand before your trial, it's considered time and a half. So you get credit for time and a half. So even though I've served a full year, like minus a couple of days sort of thing, that's true. Yeah. So basically it counts as a year and a half, 18 months roughly. Okay.
But in the eyes of the law, the court, you lost. So their precedent is now set. So in the future, if somebody sees some father or mother finds that their child is in imminent harm and they try to take them away, they're now in contravention of the law, correct?
Yes.
And what you want to do, you're saying donate to my fundraiser because I'm not giving this up. I'm going to take it to the Supreme Court of Canada, and I want the law to be interpreted the right way, not the way this judge has interpreted it. Exactly.
I'm not advocating for parents kidnapping their children, obviously, but this situation was serious. This, people don't realize, people are always making comments. A judge makes comments, you could have dealt with this in court, blah, blah, blah. That's total horseshit. I did everything a parent could do in my power to avoid the situation that happened. She admitted on the stand, my ex, for 9 months, I was contacting her through Viber messaging, trying to get her to deal with the issue. She not one single message back until a couple days before the vaccine was released and approved by Health Canada, where she said, I'm going to do what the Health Canada or whatever, I'm going to do whatever the government tells me to do. Then it went to court, and I went to Queen's Bench, it was called at the time, and I fought there. And I was like, nope, you got to return your daughter. She's going to be vaccinated. There's nothing you can do about it. Then I went to the appeal court. And they asked them, the Justice Luer, who's now the, what is he now? He's called the Chief Justice of Saskatchewan. So he was the last judge that I went before. So him being on there, I hope he's going to excuse himself in the appeal court, but likely they won't. So he asked them, would you hold off on the vaccination of Sarah until this gets to court and be argued and blah, blah, blah? Nope, we will not. So, if I would have returned her, she would have been vaccinated right away. So my back was against the wall. And that's what this is about. It's not about just a parent willy-nilly saying, I don't like what TV shows my kids watch and I'm going to kidnap them. To me, this was life and death. This was serious. I believe that thing would harm my daughter in many different ways. And I still do. I mean, the evidence is out. They wouldn't allow any evidence at trial whatsoever, zero. And but we all know the truth, and it's everywhere, the damage that's been done. So no matter what happens, you know, in retrospect, I've already won because my daughter was never vaccinated. So amen. Thank you, Lord, for protecting her from that. But on the other hand, my ex has stated in court documents she's still trying to vaccinate her, but she's refusing because she believes the lies I told her. So amen to that as well. But we just, you know, I didn't have a choice. My back was against the wall. And in those situations, you do what you do as a parent, right? If you love your child and you want your goal is to protect them, you have to do what you have to do. And the law, you shouldn't have to break the law to do that, right? You shouldn't have to. I mean, our laws are wrong. They're set up wrong. And it's intent. It comes down to your intent. And they know and have admitted, even the judge in my sentencing hearing admitted, my intent was to save my daughter from the vaccine. But she slips in her little thing where she goes, what did she call it? The word, I can't remember the word, but she said, you know, the questionable risks, right? So she was acting like there is no risk to it. And of course she can say that because there's no evidence on file that it is bad. So, well, I actually did get in the Health Canada vaccine injury reports, but she wouldn't let me discuss them or anything. And I don't know if it's entered into evidence, but I brought it up and handed it to the jury, and they were allowed to go in a room for like a half an hour and look at them, and then they were taken back. So, and then when I went to speak about them, no, you're not allowed to talk about them. And I'm like, why? Well, you're not an expert. I said, I don't have to be. This is written on our own government website. I'm just listing out the injuries. From the time that I was gone, I think it was from September to February, I was reading out the injuries. And there was already like 15,000 injuries at that time back in 2021. And they wouldn't even let me discuss that. Like I wasn't bringing up what happened now today where there's probably millions. I was just going by the time that I made that decision to protect my daughter.
You know, I've talked to a couple of lawyers. I talked to Sean Buckley recently.
Yep.
And the consensus is that these law schools are just so woke. So you go into this law school, and this is like from the 80s. You go to law school, you come out as a complete woke, brain dead, I don't know, zombie. And then eventually you end up being a judge. So this judge firmly believes that when the government says, you know, water is not wet, up is down, you know, the sky is not blue, like whatever they say, it's fact, it's truth. And then, you know, little Michael Jackson comes in their mind. Obviously, Michael Jackson shouldn't be allowed to repeat these, you know, whatever, the vaccine injuries. The government said it's safe. So my question is, how do we, even if, let's say you win the Supreme Court ruling and we strike down this bad precedent, how do we reform the courts? Hey, man, just a simple, easy question. Yeah.
Well, you're in politics. I don't know if you want me to answer that. I think for one, and a lot of people disagree, we have to vote on our judges, just like in the United States, they vote on their judges. I think we have to do that. That way we can hold them to account. Second of all, we have a judicial watch in Canada that is completely swamped and overrun. I don't even know how many thousands. Somebody told me, and I wouldn't be able to quote it. It used to be like, you know, a handful a year of judges who'd get complaints against them. Now it's in the thousands. And the government, of course, they don't add to the judicial watch. What would you call it? You know, office sort of thing, give them lots more staff and all this. They just let them become swamped, right? So nothing gets done. And even in that, the judicial watch, it's retired judges who do it. And it should be the public, right? It should be like, there's Joe, who's a farmer. There's Bob, an electrician, and Sue, who's a nurse and whatever. They should be the people on the judicial watch and maybe have a judge or two to kind of guide them and advise them, but not make any decisions. That's the way we should oversee our judges. And yeah, I mean, the court system, again, you know, I don't know what would happen, but it literally has to start again. Like you have to just, and I know there's a lots of people who are involved in it right now, but you'd have to pick a date and shut it all down and start it from scratch, because it's not just the judges. Like we all know, lawyers, like they're so corrupt, right? The judges are so corrupt, and it's even goes into the staff. You know, I've had situations with court clerks that would blow your mind, where they're just as corrupt because they're taking their orders from the judges, right? For instance, in the Appeal Court of Saskatchewan, you have what's called a registrar at the Court of Appeal. So she's the one who files everything. You know, if you call her as a self-represented litigant, they kind of guide and advise you. They can't give you advice, but they can tell you about procedures and all that sort of thing. So, you know, this is not just a recent battle with me. I've been fighting the courts of Saskatchewan and the family system since 2017 with my divorce. And with the court clerk, what happened is after all these things happened in the appeal court, I was noticing a pattern where they're not following the law. So I said, I want the transcripts from every time I've appealed in front of I've appeared in front of the Court of Appeal of Saskatchewan. And at the time, the registrar's name was Melanie Baldwin. She's now a judge. After she's a judge. But I sent her an email, and I have that email still, and it's been introduced as evidence in the Court of Appeal. It's on record, where I said, I've been requesting the transcripts from all my Court of Appeal hearings, and you've been, ignoring me. I'm telling you right now, I'm putting you on notice because I did it by the phone. You never do anything by phone. Write it in an email. Everything you do, have a chain, right? Copy it, send it to your friends, CC people. So I said, I've been asking for 4 years or 3 years, whatever it was at the time, for my transcripts, and you keep refusing and telling me they don't exist. I put you on record now that I want these. And I get an email back from the registrar of the Court of Appeal, it's pretty high position, stating that there are no transcripts from the Court of Appeal. Nothing is recorded in that room and nothing is videotaped. And if it is, it's on a special occasion for training purposes only. She completely lied. I went back and I did research, and I found out that across Canada, every province has a Court of Appeal, right? Provincial Court of Appeal before it goes to Supreme Court. Every province, you can get transcripts. Anybody who's involved in a case in the Court of Appeal has carte blanche to freedom of information. Recordings, video, documents, whatever, if you're involved in a case. The only ones who didn't was, I think it was Nova Scotia, because they were really small, but they were working on it. They were hiring transcribers and they were setting it up to get ready. So they probably do now. And Saskatchewan, who already has all the transcribers and everything, but they just don't want anybody knowing what's going on. So I took it, I filed a motion in the appeal court, and I got before, at the time, one of the most corrupt judges I've ever been before, Chief Justice Richards, who was the one before the new one now. And him and I think it was 2 others. It was by video or by phone or video, whatever it was. And I put in a motion that I want these transcripts that and I entered as evidence their own freedom of information policies written right on their website in Sask Courts, right? Where it says the same thing as every other province. You have the right to all information and blah, 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 blah. But for me, they didn't want me to have that. They were lying to me. So in my evidence, I presented that, their own procedures and rules of court. I introduced that every other province in the country does it. I introduced the email that Melanie Baldwin lied to me, and I wanted her held in contempt for lying to me. So that was part of my motion, that the Court of Appeal registrar be held in contempt of court for what she did. But you see, she answers to Chief Justice Richard. That's her boss. So he instructs the registrar what to do. So the decisions were coming from him, not from her. She was just doing what she was told. So in the hearing, he asked, what I wanted, and I told him, and he's like, making up all the goobly-gook. And I said, nope. And I said, and I also want you to be held accountable because you are the boss of the Court of Appeal. So this email that's in evidence shows that you were interfering in court matters illegally. And he got so pissed off, he hung up the phone on me. The judge, Chief Justice Richards, hung up the phone. And he picked up the phone. They called me back and he said, okay, Mr. Jackson, have you cooled down? I said, I was never upset. And he goes, okay, can we move forward? And I said, sure, we can move forward when you explain to the court on record why you interfered. And he got so mad. And I just kept asking him the same question. So, the hearing ended after a lot of arguing between me and him over the phone. And they ruled on it like a week or 2 later and said, yes, we'll give you the transcripts. The ones that don't exist, that are never recorded, they gave them to me. So then after they gave them to me, they gave me the written And I said, wait a minute. I had to go back to court. And I said, listen, you're playing games again. I want the audio and the written because I don't trust the transcripts, right? So then he tried to delay that and said, well, you said and or, so we thought we'd just give you the one, playing games. And I said, listen, I'll take it back to court again. I'll do it all over again. You can't do this. And then they released the audio. So I have all the audio. At least you'd hope all of it all. I mean, maybe they, edit things. And
Michael, I'm just thinking, like, these court proceedings, they're open to the public, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing confidential about these transcripts, correct?
Right.
Why don't they just put them online? Like, you just put them on the website.
Why not? Yep. Why not? But they won't, because they, like, especially in Saskatchewan in family court, you have what's called chamber matters. So it's not like a hearing or a trial. You deal with like issues within your custody battle or whatever. You go on a Friday to court and, my wife's not letting me pick my kids up at 5 on Saturday. Instead, I have to do it, at 8 o'clock at night or whatever. You have these small discrepancies, right? So you go to what's called chambers matters and you go to court before a family judge. Those, they tell you, are not recorded and there's no transcripts available. And I think that's a lie also. And I'm going to continue that fight to find out for fact. And if it is fact that they do, I'll be going after them wholeheartedly on that one, because I've had judges say the strangest things to me in chambers matters. And I've seen it said to other people, like just crazy stuff that goes on. But the judges don't want the public to know that goes on, right? Because when a parent, either father or mother, tells their friends about what happened in family court that day, most people go, nah, that doesn't happen. Nah, not in Canada. They don't believe it, right? But if you were to actually watch the video and hear what judges say to people fighting for their children, it would blow your mind. They are so arrogant. They are so not about the best interest of the child. It's they don't even let evidence in half the time. You say, well, I got these documents, or I don't care. They never read the file beforehand, and you can blame whatever you want. That judges are busy and they don't have time to read every file before it comes up from them. Bullshit. Doesn't matter. That's your duty. You don't get a case on a child's best interest and you have two parents and they have all these affidavits and evidence and you don't even look at it. What are you, Superman? You're going to be able to, listen to, because they don't even look at it. They just listen to what the parents say back and forth and they make a decision. Well, I'm sorry, but I've met a lot of good con artists and a lot of liars that say a lot of things. Doesn't mean it's believable or the truth. I've been entered all sorts from day one of my custody battle. I've had evidence to back everything I've said. Every lie she's told, I've discounted every single one. But do you think a judge ever read any of my evidence or even referred to it in a ruling? Nothing. In my custody trial in 2018, I got accused of everything under the sun. Like anything you could imagine a lawyer would say about a father was said. And I discounted everything through my whole trial. In fact, when I tried to enter evidence in my trial, I was told to shut up and sit down because it had nothing to do with the best interest of my child. But the woman was allowed to discredit me for 2 days on the stand, how bad I was, but I wasn't allowed to enter my evidence as to why I was a good dad. So this whole thing with transparency in our courts is a huge issue. And I think these judges would almost be embarrassed if some of the videos were released online. Like, look at my sentencing hearing, for instance. The judge warned everybody that if you're watching this live, because I sent out a link, right, so everybody could watch it live. If you're watching this live, you have the right to watch, but you can't copy it, you can't post it, you can't send it out. Well, why not? If it's totally open to the public and everybody can watch this, why can't you share it? Why can't you, post it up? Why can't I post my sentencing hearing right on my X page? What do you got to fear? Because they say things out of control, right? Or out of lack of control. Judges always show who they really are when they're talking. When they write, they can cover their ass. They can, make them sound like all legitimate and, I'm this and I'm that and this is blah, blah, blah. But when they're talking, they can't hide who they are, right? So if you watched my sentencing hearing, you could tell how angry the judge was. She was mad and it was visible. She wanted to sentence me to life in prison. You could tell, but she couldn't. And that's what they don't want you to see, right?
They basically want to operate without oversight.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got? Yeah, they don't like what about feedback, criticism, any of that.
Yeah.
X will help everyone expose the corrupt system to the world. Bring it on, Michael. Don Bucks likes what you're doing. Michael, one last thing I want to talk about. Tell us what happened in the courtroom. You kind of went over this, but your final sentencing, anything else you want to add the judge said or did which you thought was inappropriate?
Sure. So again, can I I'll tell you a story because I'm a believer, right? And this is going to sound really strange to people, and you can believe what you want, but I got to say this. So, you could tell when I was sitting there, well, something she said that was unbelievable. First, I should point this out. I think did I already mention about her calling me evil? That I was the evil the government was trying to get out of our country, sort of thing, like this just evil men or evil parents who do this evil act sort of thing. And another thing is, when I was writing my sentencing submissions, this amicus curiae who's appointed to help me, but he's literally loyal to the crown. So I only told him what I thought I would tell him. Like, I didn't trust him the whole way through. So when it come to my sentencing submissions that I had to write, I asked him, I said, I'm going to go hard on my ex-wife's victim impact statement because it's full of bullshit. Like, she did a good cry on the CBC News, but really she never ever said anything about her reasons or wanting to protect her daughter, nothing, right? It was all just vengeance, right? Trying to get back at me, using my daughter as a weapon. So I said to the lawyer, I said, I'm going to go hard on this victim impact statement. He said, no, don't bother. I said, well, why not? It points it out like she did all this suffering and blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, well, the judge won't put any weight to that. The judge knows why you did what you did and that your wife's just drama and all this and blah, blah, blah. So don't worry about it. And I felt really uncomfortable, like he was lying, right? So I did attack it, but I didn't attack it full blow. Like, I just kind of brought it up and pointed out these things about her impact statement that were lies. And sure enough, during the sentencing hearing, she said that the deciding factor was your ex-wife's victim impact statement. I was so moved by how devastated the damage you did to her and blah, 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 blah. And that was why she was so, part of the anger. And I turned to the amicus and he wouldn't look at me, but I asked him after trial or after the sentencing hearing, I said, hey, do you remember me addressing that issue with you and you telling me to ignore the victim impact statement? And he just looked at me, didn't say a word. And I said, I guess you were wrong because that's a lot of fucking weight, wasn't it? And he just he could tell weeks ago that I wanted nothing to do with him, because even at my sentencing submissions, he told me on the phone, he wrote this big thing about why this shouldn't happen. And when he got up, he spoke for like 2 minutes and sat down, right? So he didn't really fight anything. Not that he's supposed to, but he didn't bring up the points I thought he would for the press, because a lot of this is about the press. It's about the image they want to create about me, right? They want me to be this crazy father who doesn't believe in the law, breaks the law, has no respect for the law, and we need to stop guys like this and control them and blah, 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 blah. That's what they're trying to get out there, right? So the press is beautiful at doing that, obviously. That's what they've been saying the whole way along. So
last time you and I did an interview, we kind of covered the concept of common law, how it's supposed to work. The jury is supposed to have more power. You mentioned that the judge, its sentencing, just, was very, very unprofessional towards you. Sentencing is supposed to be, shouldn't it be the role of the jury as well? Or is this another thing the judge has usurped?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think that's in civil law. So money and things like that, I think it's up to the jury. But I don't know, maybe the jury should be questioned in sentencing, at least to get their opinion. Maybe it doesn't hold the full weight, but maybe going forward, if we're going to redo this justice system, maybe they should have a say in that, right? Maybe not the deciding factor, or maybe the deciding factor. I mean, it is them, but they did find me guilty as well. So that could have been dangerous too. They were most of them, I believe, worked in the healthcare field. I think all of them were vaccinated. So, that's a dangerous thing to get into too. But, you take your chances, you roll the dice, right? And what's going to happen? It's nobody really knows the best way to move forward because we've been in this corrupt system for so many generations. None of us even know what justice is anymore, or how it's supposed to work, right? I think justice depends on intent. So, it's like you're driving down the highway and you get pulled over by a policeman. He's like, hey, man, you're doing 180. Where you going? What you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And he writes you a ticket. Well, if you say to the policeman, you say, well, I'm sorry, I just had my mind on other things. I was watching the road and everything else. I'm driving safe. I wasn't in and out of lanes, but I wasn't speeding intentionally, right? Okay, no problem, sir. On your way. But if you're driving down the highway and you're in a rush and you got the pedal to the metal and he pulls you over and says, what's the problem? You say, I'm in a rush. I'm late for work and I had to get there fast. Okay, then you had intent. You're guilty, right? But that's the way I think law should work. That's a simplistic way in my mind. Like this whole thing, like ignorance is no defense. Well, it kind of should be, right? If you didn't intend to or know that you were doing something wrong, you shouldn't be held accountable for it. And if you are, that should definitely be taken into consideration.
So we have one comment from Don Bucks. Michael, you must put together a Substack of all testimonies you have put together and put it up on X. You will benefit tremendously with court of public opinion.
And I would love to, but again, even this came up like last week. I was in a space and I told people that I'm trying to get my evidence onto Twitter, but Twitter won't upgrade me. So I paid the money to get upgraded, and I've been going in this circle for 8 months when I go to verify my ID and do this and get the blue tick, and it just keeps returning me back to, hey, join Twitter Premium. And I'm like, I already paid for it. And I sent, requests to help, and nothing's done. So I've had all these people in all these spaces. Oh, I'll help you with that. We'll help you get your blue tick and blah, blah, blah. And then you never hear from them again. So even last week, some big people said, hey, we'll deal with that. We'll get you certified, or what do you call it on Twitter when you get the blue tick? Authorized, verified. We'll get you verified, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I haven't heard from them because I can only post 280 characters, and maybe I could screenshot something and put it on that would help, but it's really difficult. It'd be neat to be able to have somebody who says they're going to help actually fall through and help me get through all these things. Because I do need to put this out there so people can see just how flagrant their disregard of their own rules have been, right? It's been pretty bad. So, but, hopefully somebody will stand up and help me out with that. And, moving forward. And I'd just like to say, too, next week I have to go back to family court. They're still coming after me for child support. And the last time I went, I think I told people in November of last year, I brought an application to have my custody restored. Because when Justice McGaw, when I was in jail, when he removed my custody, when I was in a jail sitting on a phone, this is the way he did it. Got on the phone. I had a legal aid lawyer named Alex Deacon. And the first thing the judge says on the first hearing is, I'm going to remove Mr. Jackson's custody, full stop, right now, like done, nothing there. Do you have an issue with that? And the lawyer said, nope. And I was like, at the time, I still had limited access, right? I was on the phone in the jail cell. No, you can't do that. And the judge says, you shut up. You don't have a right to speak. You have a lawyer. But somebody mentioned it a little while ago. It's like, how is it that a judge can remove your custody forever without even a hearing, without even a discussion, nothing? Just says it on the phone. This is what I'm doing. And that's why we need these calls recorded and all this behavior. So now there's, we're thinking of appealing, or I'm thinking, I haven't really had a serious discussion with my lawyer, but I mentioned it in my Give, Send, Go of going back after them as well, if we can raise enough money to get the access. Like, I haven't seen my daughter since I was arrested almost 3 years ago. So last November, I applied to the court again and said, listen, this taking away my custody was wrong. You have no right. I didn't do anything evil or anything. I didn't hurt or affect my daughter in any negative way. And I said, I want a hearing. So they played around, kept switching lawyers on my wife's side, ex-wife's over and over. I finally got a hearing in February. The judge restricted me to 20 minutes in the hearing. And I had all these new accusations against me from this slimeball lawyer in Regina named Vogel. And And the judge reserved her decision. So I thought, a couple weeks she'll think about it. And, she has no right to restrict my access. I haven't done anything terrible. Well, it's now December. She hasn't released a decision. So I can't even go back to court right now and file a new motion, say, hey, you got to let me see my daughter, because I already did that. And I'm supposed to wait till the judge renders her decision. 9 months now. What is that? February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 11 months.
Like the whole system is just, it's upside down that they can do this. They can drag it out for 9 months. There's no consequences. You can't really sue these judges civilly. There's no oversight. You can't vote them out. No one's impeaching these judges. It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening.
It is. Yeah. They don't answer to anybody. Well, I think they do answer to the Chief Justice. I could be wrong. Like, they'll maybe tell you they don't, but I'm sure he directs things. Because if you look at my history in the last 10 years in this court, it's been, or not 10 years, what is it? 24, 7 years, 8 years. It's been pretty obvious that things have been abnormal to the extent where it's like super abnormal. Like, for instance, when you get divorced or separated, when one parent or whatever, when you split up, you get what's called, what is it called? Interim custody order. So that means until you get to court to have a trial on your custody issues, the judge decides what's best at that time for your child, right? So in our first, people don't realize too, my ex-wife kidnapped my daughter when she first left. She left in the middle of a snowstorm and disappeared and didn't tell me nothing. I was plowing the snow around my house, and I come back in the house and she's gone, and it was a blizzard, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they went to get the mail or something and something happened. But no, she had it all planned out and kidnapped my daughter and ran, right? And so, I ended up going to court for that. I got the order for her to return my daughter. The police ignored it, didn't do anything about it. So we go to an interim custody order or a hearing, and the judge was keen. This guy was brutal, like, been on the bench for probably 75 years sort of thing, right? Just angry old man, right? And we get into the interim custody, and I had a lawyer and she had a lawyer, the same. Yeah, we could talk about that. But anyways, my ex-wife comes into the courtroom with two different women. They sit down on the back bench. They actually walk by me because it's a really small courtroom in Regina. They walk past me in my aisle and they sit down at the back. My ex-wife lies down with her head on the lap of the one woman and her feet on the lap of the other one. And one's rubbing my ex's feet and the other one's, patting her head while my wife cries in 3D stereo through the whole hearing. And the judge never once told her, if you can't control yourself, leave the courtroom. He just kept watching her over and over. So he made this outrageous interim custody order that she can live in Regina, which is 3.5 hours away from me. And that's not allowed. You're not allowed to leave within, I think it's a 60-kilometer radius from where the child's home was, right? So he allowed her to establish a new residence, a new life, and blah, blah, blah for my daughter, which was wrong. So I appealed that decision, that interim custody order, the next day. What that meant was you go back to the last court order, and that's what stands. The last court order was my order that said that she had to return my daughter. So that meant by me filing that appeal, they had to return Sarah to my house immediately. They ignored it for 18 months. They just ignored it. I went through hearing after hearing after hearing for the next 18 months where they totally ignored that I appealed that decision, which made it null and void until it goes to an appeal court hearing. By the time I got to my hearing 18 months later before the appeal court, 3 judges, you know what they said? Well, it doesn't matter. It's too late now anyways.
They do this, don't they? They just wait until it drags out and they're like, well, it's too late. Can't do anything now.
But they broke the law, right? Their own laws. They broke it. They didn't
There's no accountability. This is what I mean. It's maddening.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And another thing they did was they said to me at the end of that hearing, they said, okay, Michael, you can leave now. We're done. We have different matters. And my ex-wife's lawyer stayed. So I go outside the courtroom and I'm like, well, that's weird. Why did she stay? So I look on the docket that day. That other lawyer didn't have any other matter. Mine was the only matter that morning with those judges. So what conversation did they have after I left the room with that lawyer? You know, it's so crooked. It's so corrupt. And, you know, maybe they had a sense in the beginning that I was trouble, you know, that I was, you know, going to, you know, hold them to account. And I hope they did. And I hope it proves out in the end that they realize that I'm a fighter and I'm not going to give up no matter what you can do. You can lock me up the rest of my life. I'll still yell and scream from the rooftops, right, about how unjust this is. I'm going to point them all out. I'm going to bring everything they've done. I'm going to bring the light to it. Well, God will bring the light to it. He does to everything, right? And once the light hits it, it can't be hidden anymore. It gets exposed.
So, Michael, that's good on you. You should keep doing that. We're almost over. I have to get going. But one last thing, in case people were late to the party, I'm just going to bring this up again. Can you please tell the audience, what are you asking for and why should people donate to your cause?
I'm asking for help with my legal defense here. We've appealed this decision now that I've been found guilty of abduction and contravention of a parenting order. What we're trying to do is set a precedent in Canada for parents, not for the government. If this decision stands, the government will have a right to go after every parent who breaks the law for whatever reason. It's not going to matter. The law comes first. If you listen to the interviews from the Crown Attorney after my sentencing, she states unequivocally, clear as a bell, exactly what I'm telling you. Now we have a precedent in this country and on this charge that we can go after parents. So if parents here care about their rights in this country, you need to stand up beside me and support me. This will likely go to the Supreme Court, so we need money. And, you know, right now it's only $4,000. You know, I'm looking for 25, and I don't even know if that'll be enough. We'll have to reassess after it goes through the appeal court. If we don't win there and it goes to the Supreme Court, I'm sure it'll be much more. But also, you know, I'm going to use some of this legal fund actually to go back after them to get access to my daughter. And we have a lawyer on file right now. And we have to fight this. We have to set the precedent for us. They can't set the precedent for them. So we just need your support.
Good stuff, Michael. You're doing great work. I really, really hope you get your $25,000 because I really want this to go. It's just, it breaks my heart that what they're trying to do is demoralize you, crush you. They're breaking the law, and they're hoping that nobody will donate to you, so you'll just wither away and die. But
yes,
you're a fighter, and I'm sure you're going to stay in there.
Yeah, God will provide one way or the other.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for continuing the fight, and hopefully we'll get you back on at some point. Thank you, Payman. I'm really, really thankful that you bring me on to tell this story. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you, brother. Glad to help. Take care. Goodbye, everyone. Yep. Bye-bye.